Yeah. So it's something which is a very frustrating thing that we as nephrologists see in daily practice, and it's something which is very difficult for our patients also to kind of deal with. As we saw it in the panel discussion, water restriction or fluid restriction was one of the most difficult aspects of dietary modification, lifestyle modification that they face. So let's address the topic at hand: interdialytic weight gain. I will briefly define it, why it is important. Is it interdialytic weight gain that is bad, or is it volume overload? And how do we deal with it? So, simply put, pre-dialysis weight of the current session minus the post-dialysis weight of the previous dialysis is what interdialytic weight gain is. To complicate the definition and to convert it into a percentage, we use the same uh, result and divide it by the dry weight, further divided by the number of days between two sessions, and take a percentage of it, and that is how you describe it in percentage form. There are several reports which also suggest interdialytic weight gain as a marker of nutrition. Uh, the logic is those who have very less interdialytic weight gain have probably eat very less and gain very little weight. And with increased protein and calorie intake, the water and salt intake also increases. There have been studies which propose its role as a marker of nutrition as well. In a given dialysis unit, the interdialytic weight gain can vary widely, with most patients on an average having a weight gain of close to 2 to 3.5 kilos, which I think all of y'all will agree with. That's been my observation in my practice. And that is approximately less than 5% of body weight. Now, high interdialytic weight gain, I'm sorry, high interdialytic weight gain is more often than not associated with a state of persistent chronic water overload. It has been estimated that more than 30 to 60% of dialysis patients do not adhere to a fluid regimen, and this leads to almost 62% patients having chronic volume. This is translates into a 62% higher risk of death in patients who have a chronic fluid overload. Chronic fluid overload also leads to uncontrolled hypertension, which is seen in more than 60% of our patients, and it is postulated that achieving an accurate dry weight will control more than 60% cases of hypertension. So let's see what happens with repeated volume overloads and repeated high interdialytic weight gain, which usually is associated with a state of persistent water excess. So fluid overload will lead to uncontrolled hypertension, which lead to left ventricular hypertrophy, frequent episodes of heart failures, frequent hospitalizations, and risk of death. It necessitates a high ultrafiltration rate because we have to remove the water to achieve as close to normovolemia as possible. As we all very well know, high ultrafiltration rate is extremely bad. It worsens or predisposes to interdialytic hypotension. There are several reports which suggest that there is increased and extensive cardiac and brain stunning which happen with high ultrafiltration rates. Intradialytic hypotension often associated with cramping, dizziness, nausea. This leads to a long post-dialysis recovery time, which ultimately leads to a lot of attrition, a lot of missed dialysis, and poor quality of life. Missed dialysis will ultimately contribute to the state of volume overload, and the cycle will repeat. So this analysis in the DOPS database has shown that interdialytic weight gain less than 5.7% was associated with an improved survival, and they've postulated that it should be the range of interdialytic weight gain should be between 4 to 4.5% of dry weight, which corroborates to approximately 3 liters. 5.7 will be close to approximately 4 liters for a 70-kilo male. However, many patients have an interdialytic weight gain of as high as 10 to 20%, and it's extremely difficult to bring that down often. Several studies, as I will now soon elaborate, have shown an association with higher risk of all-cause death and cardiovascular mortality. Tech team, I can't see the time. Yeah. So what are the issues with interdialytic weight gain as a marker? Reported causes and consequences known so far suggest that it is a measure of non-adherence. We assume that patients are not adhering to fluid restriction, salt restriction, that is leading to high interdialytic weight gain. We assume that a lot of this is associated with psychological aspects. Few of these studies have suggested it to be a marker of better nutrition, though there may be a caveat to that. And it is often associated and known to be seen with high sodium intake. More often than not, this is commonly missed. patients who have a poor sugar control on dialysis have increased thirst tendency, and that also contributes to developing high interdialytic weight gain. So many trials, I will point out three studies, large studies, which have shown that an interdialytic weight gain of more than 4.8% of body weight was associated with mortality, slightly higher risk, 1.12, not too high, but definitely significant increase in mortality. This Dobbs analysis shows that interdialytic weight gain of 5.7% was associated with an increased mortality of with a ratio of 1.12. In this large US registry analysis, the mortality risk was increased after adjusting for case mix. This is a study which was led by Dr. Cam Kalenter with heart rate of 1.2, Hazard's ratio of 1.25 for a weight gain of more than 4 kilos. However, quite often, we end up blaming things which are, actually, it's something else which needs to be blamed rather. This is a study from Europe of almost 3,000 to 4,000 patients, where they used body composition analysis to assess volume overload post-dialysis. What they did was, what you can see in this paper is that patients who had a high interdialytic weight gain of close to 4 liters had a negative volume overload post-dialysis. What does that mean? That most of these patients were getting dehydrated at the end of dialysis because of a large interdialytic weight gain. So continuously expressed interdialytic weight gain was higher, and post-dialysis volume overload was more negative. So here, they've not seen a great association with mortality, which suggests that interdialytic weight gain as a marker may be a faulty one, and it is more likely the state of chronic volume overload, which is contributing to the increased mortality that we see with high interdialytic weight gain. So the only extremes of interdialytic weight gain, as we see in these three studies, more than 5%, more than 5.7%, more than 4 kilos, were associated with adverse mortality risk, and which was relatively small. And all these three studies did not have adjustment for high ultrafiltration rates, which have been shown to be associated with increased mortality. So as a marker, is it a great marker? Only patients with very high levels of weight gain have an elevated risk. The magnitude of risk is very small. It is not synonymous with chronic volume overload. When measured by bioimpedance or inferred from slopes of RPV, there are marked higher mortality risks for overhydration and hypervolemia than for interdialytic weight gain. So to rephrase my title of the study, of the talk, I would talk about strategies to minimize interdialytic weight gain, UF rate, and volume overload in hemodialysis. And the first step in any treatment is accurate diagnosis. So what we should focus on when a difficult patient comes to us with high weight gain is that we should get behind accurate dry weight measurement. And the common tools that are now available are online blood volume monitoring, but that determines more, it is more indicative of a plasma refilling rather than actual interstitial fluid volume. IVC very easily performed. I do it quite often in our practice. We have easy access to point of care ultrasound. It's simple to perform. It often gives you accurate answers and direction to maintaining the fluid status. Chemical analysis, I'm not too sure that they are too sensitive in our patients. Whole body bioimpedance remains one of the gold standards, but it's not widely available. So coming to therapeutics, let's first focus on non-pharmacological treatment and on minimizing intake by diet and lifestyle modification. Reduction in salt intake, no doubt, takes priority. Treatment of xerostomia and optimizing diuretics and close monitoring and is how I've divided these talks. So coming to reducing fluid intake, it is extremely important, but that's where most of our focus is. Pani Campio, but it won't work alone in isolation. It often will lead to increase in hemoconcentration, will increase thirst, and patients will end up drinking more water. Many times we see patients who keep saying that hum pani nahi peete hai, sahab ji, nahi peete. And there you have to become detective and try to find out what's going wrong. Just giving you one small example. If you see this uncooked rice, it's measuring 75 grams, and the same amount of cooked rice measures approximately 210, 220, which leads to an insensible water gain of close to 140 ml. So if it's a rice eater family, most, they will gain more than 400 to 500 milliliters every day just in eating rice. Reducing salt intake becomes the cornerstone, whether it is through diet or whether it is through dialysis. And advising patients to just limit water intake will not help. And we should try to bring down the amount of salt intake to as less as possible, close to approximately 2 grams per day, 5 grams of salt, that is 2 grams of sodium per day. And it's seen that the average salt intake in our dialysis patients is close to 7 to 14 grams often. And quite often, these patients have episodes of intradialytic hypotension. The technician commonly says soy chips khalo, which is, you end up in a positive vicious cycle. It will lead to greater thirst, greater weight gain. Next time the BP will go down again and you eat more salt. As we see in this meta-analysis, you see most of the trials have shown a reduction in intradialytic weight gain with salt restriction. There are 2 studies which don't show any benefit, but please check. In these 2 studies, they've not been able to define whether salt restriction was adequately achieved or not. This is another, one pilot study which adds to this observation. In this study, the participants were delivered home pre-cooked meals which were microwavable with a salt content of just a sodium content of just 2 grams, and it led to a significant reduction in intradialytic weight gain in the study population. Managing thirst, Dr. Khanna asked in the panel discussion how many of these patients get thirst or suffer from xerostomia. It's seen in almost 28 to 60% of our patients. Often there are correctable causes such as medicines, which, antipsychotics, antihypertensives, which cause xerostomia, and we should correct those measures. Stimulation of salivary glands, whether it is mechanically or using acupressure or by cheating the brain, is something that we should try, but more often than not, it does not work. So what is this cheating the brain? We often advise the patients thanda pani piyo or suck on lozenges. It's, our soft palate has cold receptors. Most of us, when we come from a hot day, we want to drink cold water. Why is that? Because there is enough observational data which shows that just sucking on ice chips or just, sucking on menthol will bring about an immediate suppression of ADH secretion and thirst rather than drinking approximately 200 to 300 ml of water at room temperature. So more often than not, I advise my patients to take a mouthful of cold water, just gargle in the mouth, drink half of it and throw away half of it. Or like Dr. Zamrud initially mentioned, I asked them to make lemon lollipops or lemon water icicles, which they can suck on it and feel much relieved afterwards. Another thing that I advise my patients is to gargle with Listerine. It stimulates these receptors and it makes your mouth a little bitter for the water that you drink. That's my personal observation, and I ask my patients, and they kind of feel that the thirst goes down after adopting these measures. Chewing gum and saliva substitutes, they don't work. They've not shown to be of benefit in trials, but anecdotally we can try and see if it helps some patients. Optimizing diuretics, squeezing the kidney is what I call them. And this is a data from the DOT study, 16,000 patients where diuretics were, in population where diuretics was continued, there was a significant difference in intradialytic weight gain and weight change in dialysis. Patients who were administered diuretics also had improvement in hard outcomes, that is 7% lower all-cause mortality and 14% reduction in cardiac-specific mortality in patients who were not receiving diuretics. This is a beautiful visual abstract by Divya. This is, again, a large study, 11,000 patients, where continuing diuretics led to reduced hospitalization, reduced episodes of intradialytic hypotension, less interdialytic weight gain, though the difference was not huge, but it was statistically significant. And it also led to reduction in mortality. Is there a randomized control trial? It is in process, but the primary target is prevention of IDH, not intradialytic weight gain, but it is being conducted in China, where they will be using incremental doses of furosemide. They will start at 80 milligrams, will push it up to 160. If the urine response is not great, the estimated sample size is more than 500 patients, and it is expected to come out in end of 2022. Telemetry is another way where it emphasizes on monitoring these patients, the weight that they gain every day. It is something which we can adopt without significant infrastructure. We can ask these patients to monitor the daily weight every day in the morning, even between dialysis, and ask them to keep sending us the reports. And if the weight gain is more than what it should be, the physician can, or the nursing coordinator can contact them and kind of reinforce the necessity to reduce the water and salt intake. The difference that was seen in this study was approximately 200 to 300 milligrams. Correcting dialysis prescription. We dealt with patient factors. Now let's deal with what we do wrong. And more often than not, we use a high dialyzed sodium, especially in patients who have intradialytic hypotension. And it does bring about a hemodynamic stability, but at the expense of increased thirst and increased weight gain, which next time will cause a hemodynamic instability again. So the DOPS data has now come out that both absolute and percentage of intradialytic weight gain declined since the intradialytic sodium concentrations were reduced. This chart, which kind of compares all the studies, have shown a mixed benefit with reducing the intradialytic sodium. The interventions were of different levels. Some studies adopted 135 milliequivalent, some adopted 138, but there was a significantly reduced intradialytic weight gain that was seen in a lot of these studies, and it makes sense also to reduce the exposure of salt. That is something that we aim in right from pre-dialysis to dialysis and transplant patients as well. Does dialysis frequency and duration help? Yes, there has been no RCT which compares, which studies interdialytic weight gain as a primary endpoint. But if you see the FHN trials, the per session ultrafiltration or the weight gain between dialysis was significantly lesser in the patients who had frequent dialysis. This data from almost 14,000 patients, it's a retrospective data, compared delivered session length of more than 240 minutes to less than 240 minutes, which showed a reduction in all-cause mortality with a longer dialysis session, and also was compared with a reduced interdialytic weight gain and also reduced mortality because of the reduction in interdialytic weight gain. Behavioral modification therapy, more often than not, it's something which is, in our busy practice, we don't get time to, sit with our patients and discuss, but it's something which has shown to be of benefit in a lot of studies and in systemic analysis as well. This was a randomized control trial where the patients were counseled and then they went through a group session of counseling where the importance of weight gain and salt and water restriction was explained. It led to an improvement in dialysis thirst inventory, and there was a small but significant decrease in interdialytic weight gain compared to the baseline group or the observer group. Another study, this was a study where self-affirmation theory-based intervention was done. More often than not, we scold our patients, we tell them, you are wrong, don't drink water, baki karte hai, tum kyun nahi kar sakte ho. These are things which often don't go well with them. It kind of, if somebody keeps scolding you repeatedly, or if somebody keeps telling you are wrong, you're doing it wrong, you kind of become resistant to it. It affects your self-integrity, and you end up, behaving contradictory to what you're supposed to, even though you know that it is wrong. So this approach or this intervention tried approaching a different method where they counseled the patients, brought the, compared, you can call them emotionally motivated them to consider what is important in life, diverted their mind to something which was important. And when they were self-aware of what had to be done, and the results were found to be of benefit, led to a reduction in interdialytic weight gain in patients who underwent this psychological intervention. Comparing several studies which have been done, you will see equal number of studies which were not successful and equal number of studies which had a reduction in interdialytic weight gain. More importantly, the benefit was small, and it underscores the fact that no one intervention is going to work, and we'll probably have to use multiple ways to help these patients drink less water and gain less weight. Newer interventions, intradialytic exercise is being excessively talked about and studied. And this is one study where they, tried to find out whether it helped in decreasing the interdialytic weight gain. These were 64 patients on dialysis, undergoing dialysis 2 times a week for 8 weeks, and the interdialytic weight gain reduced in the exercise group by 300 to almost 1500 grams, and was statistically significant. Tenapanor, another intervention that has been tried because it reduces the sodium absorption in the gut and increases stool volume. However, in this study, which was concentrated towards, with the primary endpoint being reduction in interdialytic weight gain, did not show it to be of much benefit, and it failed to meet the primary endpoint. However, this will require more studies. This was just one study which did not show benefit. Hammam baths. Nephrologists are the most innovative species of all physicians. And the biggest innovation in the history, I believe, was the dialysis machine. It's an extremely complex machine. It's an organ outside the human body, and we come up with such innovative ideas. This was a paper from Tunisia, and this was a case report where they studied it in a difficult patient, a Sudanese patient, where they brought about stimulated sweating by hot baths and sauna, following where they found there to be of a significant benefit. This was followed by a pilot study by the same group, which unfortunately did not lead to significant reduction in interdialytic weight gain. But this is an innovative concept which our patients would love to accept, and it will not be difficult for us to convince them, and it may end up being beneficial. So take home points: discriminating between volume overload and interdialytic weight gain is extremely important and will likely lead to a more appropriate management of fluid withdrawal rather than just concentrating on the delta gap between the two dialysis. And objective measures of volume status should be used beyond just evaluations of interdialytic weight gain. Absolute values of interdialytic weight gain may be, misinformative. Patient education is extremely important, remains the cornerstone of our intervention. Teach them the importance, help them monitor their daily weight, identify insensible water gain, be a detective, and salt restrictions work. So concentrate more on it. Chewing gums don't, saliva substitutes, I don't think they work. Milk the residual renal function. Kidney ko jitna nichod sakte utna nichodiye. We know that residual renal function is associated with reduction in mortality, and optimize the dialysis prescription. Having said that, we need to continue to innovate. We need to listen to our patient and not criticize them, and provide alternatives. They can be extremely smart. And they can come up with ideas which can help your other patients also. We know one size doesn't fit all. This has been used by a lot of speakers, and I agree with this, and it kind of would hold true for every talk that we hear today. And I would like to conclude my talk there. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.